Hello.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I thought I was going to go surfing today, but it looks like the surf is not looking all that good.
No, no, man. The surf's like 2 feet and kind of blown out. I
Mm-hmm.
was out there trying to kiteboard and never, never really kicked in. I mean, it was supposed to blow 20 to 30.
Mm-hmm.
It blew like 12 to 15.
Yeah. Do you want it to be 20 to 30?
Hell yeah.
Okay, nice.
Smaller kite, bigger air. Come on, man.
Okay, I don't know much about kite surfing.
I went from a skateboard to a skimboard to a surfboard to a windsurf board
Mm-hmm.
to a kite board to a kite foil board
Oh, God.
to a wing foil board. And the wing foiling is fun, but it's beating me up. But the kiteboarding, you're riding the entire time. You ride out,
Yep.
jump a few waves, turn around, catch a few waves, ride in. You can catch any wave you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no paddling involved. Surfing should be called paddling because 90% of the time you are paddling.
I'm here. I hear you. Anytime anyone wants to surf, that's the line I give them.
Yeah, well, paddle, paddle, paddle.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, you want to learn how to surf? We'll take you out on a perfectly flat day.
yeah, get some paddling in, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You sound very youthful, but I feel like you're older than 60, right?
Yeah, I'll be 72 next month.
Okay, excellent. And is your extreme sports keeping you young, or you got good genetics, or what's going on?
Well, I'm falling apart. Had a hip replaced last year, had cataract surgery last year, doing all this stuff with a torn rotator cuff in my right shoulder right now.
Oh, wow. Dang.
And my right knee's kind of gimpy, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't let that stop me.
Okay, so are you telling me that you have some really good physical therapy for shoulders?
Well, I do.
Okay, I'll
You
be.
know, kiteboarding is the best physical therapy you can imagine.
Really? You feel like it's more restorative or strengthening than it is destroying?
Yeah, exactly. Unless
Okay.
you got to learn how not to wipe out,
Okay.
these big jumps. If you don't land them just right, then you're going to get fried. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's to me, it's a lot more fun. It's like I said, I paddled probably half my life, so
Mm-hmm.
I was glad to get into a sport where there was no paddling involved.
I'm definitely not elitist. I feel like some people will see like a foil go by and they're like, "Damn them," and I'll be like, "I don't know, looks like fun." Especially the
Yeah,
kite surfing. I mean, Jesus, that's like.
I kind of got into it on a fluke there, and it's really been a lot of fun. I can't imagine all the money I've spent on gear. If I went back and I counted all the surfboards I've had, which are probably over 200,
Mm-hmm.
and then all the kiteboarding and windsurfing and kite foiling and wing foiling gear, people think I'm rich, but no, bro, I'm just irresponsible.
Yeah, how's retirement looking? Yeah.
In my prenup, it said if it's blowing, I'm going.
Okay, I like it. That's good. You have to communicate those boundaries early on.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And
Ah,
does that mean you're still married to this person?
oh yeah.
Okay, that's
Oh yeah,
good.
we got 5 grandkids.
Wow. I'm 37 and I've made it with no kids. The woman I'm dating now has two, which I'm excited about, but
Yeah, well, just keep this in mind. Those 2 kids are always going to come before you, always. So just
yeah,
get that in your brain right now and you'll be okay.
I can live with that. Brenda Stokes wanted me to reach out to you. It's your guys' relationship.
Brenda and I go way, way, way back. I graduated from high school in 71. Brenda lived out there at Navarre, and my parents lived close to Navarre Beach.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started surfing, my dad was in the Air Force, and he was stationed at Virginia, there at Langley. He knew I was interested in surfing. I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old. And Lance Carson, have you ever heard of Lance Carson?
I haven't. I'm not well schooled in surf history.
Well, Lance Carson invented the first pintail surfboard.
Okay.
He was in the Air Force and on the Air Force surfing team back in the day. Him and my dad ordered a blank from Grubby Clark Had it shipped from California to Virginia. They shaped me my first surfboard and laminated it.
Wow.
It was super heavy. That's one thing I remember about it.
When was this? What time was this?
Probably 1968 or 69.
Okay.
My second board was a Maury Pope John Peck penetrator. But, I've had all kinds of boards since. That was back, right before the short boards came in.
Yeah.
Twin fins, big wide tails. I shaped a lot of boards and laminated a lot of boards. I used to airbrush boards down in Cocoa Beach for Mike Tabling, a couple other guys down there. When I was in Hawaii, I moved to Hawaii in 1978. In 74, I surfed in the U.S. Championships. I actually, point-wise, beat Yancey and Beezer and all those guys because they didn't surf in all the contests and I did. So I surfed in the U.S. Championships with Brenda. She won the women's, and we both went to Hatteras in 74 and surfed in the U.S. My first heat was against Ricky Rasmussen, who won the entire thing, so I got booted out early.
Yeah, you had stiff competition.
Yeah, man, he was just shredding it. Him and Jim Cartland were just shredding the place, In 78, I moved to Hawaii, to Oahu, and I airbrushed. I airbrushed over there for George at Keone Downing and Ben Ipa surfboards.
Wow.
A few other places, and surfed every day.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's the dream, right? You show up in Hawaii, you have a surf skill, and you surf.
Yeah, it worked out great. And then when I left, I decided I would take a tour through Indo, so that was fun too.
When was that? That must have been pretty early in the Indo
That
exploration.
was 1980. The first time we were looking for Uluwatu on Bali, that break, that big long left break. And we finally found a guy who said he could take us there. And it was this huge cliff, and it had this little hole that you crawled down through.
Yeah.
And you had to be careful because the waves would wash up in there, and then you had to time it just right. And there were sea snakes. But we actually saw at the beach, right when we pulled up, Jerry Lopez, Rory Russell were just leaving. And I told these guys I was with, I said, hey, I think that was Jerry Lopez. They said, nah, it couldn't be. He's a lot taller than that.
Yeah.
If you know Lopez, he's a little short guy,
Yeah.
That's how he fit in the tube at pipe so well.
I'm already recording, if that's okay with you. And
yeah, that's fine.
We can just kind of meander like this. I would like to know more about your childhood.
Well, my dad was in the Air Force. We moved all over the place at an early age there. It wasn't until I moved close to Navarre there that I finally got some roots, and we stayed somewhere for like the next 15 years.
Yeah.
And that helped me when I started surfing, because Navarre Beach was only like 10 miles down the road from our house.
Yeah.
I remember standing out by the road hitchhiking to the beach.
So what is that, Herbert Field? Where was he at?
Yeah, Herbert Field, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And did you say your dad was on the Air Force surf team?
Now, my dad was on the Air Force golf team, but Lance Carson was on the Air Force surf team.
Got you.
And they made my first surfboard for me.
Your dad was the type of dad who nurtured your hobbies?
Yeah, my mom and dad both. I was just looking the other day. I've got the first skimboard my dad ever made me. And I actually have a sand ski that he made me too. But my mom made me my first skateboard.
Oh, my God. Okay. When do you think that was?
Oh, God. I was like 8 or 9.
Okay.
Yeah, we went by the skating rink, bought an old skate. My mom got this saw out and kind of sawed out a little surfboard looking shape, and we screwed those wheels on the bottom of it on the base. We cut that skate in half. It had a long metal thing down the middle, holding the front wheels to the back wheels. We cut that, and we just screwed that thing right to this board. And I rode that for 2 years.
Yeah? How did it work? Were you ripping?
I did some crazy stuff on that skateboard, man. I did some real crazy stuff on it, but it taught me the basics. And then I got into that skimboarding thing, which was a lot of fun. I was skimboarding, and then I thought, well, I like to probably try the surfing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad and Lance built me that board,
Yeah.
and what a ride it's been, you know.
Yeah. And what do you think? What was pulling you along? So you had these parents who were supporting your hobbies. What was continually powering that evolution that you've been going through?
You know, I started working at a real early age so I could buy surfboards.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Volkswagen van that I made several trips to the East Coast in. It was quite the surf mobile.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to be in the water. If there were waves, I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be out there, you know.
Yeah, and can you remember like some early memories of people or early experiences surfing? Anything like that?
Well, you know, I met Yancey Spencer. Gosh, I was on a surf trip in my Volkswagen van,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in St. Augustine, Florida. And this guy got out of this old beat up blue Dodge van. He had a straw hat on, and this little dog, this little black dog with him. And I guess his first wife, I saw he had Pensacola plates, and I walked over and introduced myself to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Yeah, you know, I'm Yancey Spencer from Pensacola. I'm over here surfing this contest." And I was like, "Oh, cool." It was like some East Coast, you know, professional contest.
Yep.
I remember Gary Proper was in it. I thought he was going to cry when he didn't get first place. Yeah, Yancey and I actually lived together when I was going to college in Pensacola. That was
Mm-hmm.
1972, I think, that we lived together in Pensacola.
Yeah.
And I actually worked
Mm-hmm.
in a surf shop for him.
Okay, that's cool. What was he like? Does he do his own dishes
Well, you
or?
know, Yancey's kind of an odd bird. He really was. You
Yeah.
know, he sent me a handwritten birthday card every year as long as I knew him. Come in the mail. And he sent me
Yeah, I
kept
love
up
that.
with when my birthday was. He sent me a birthday card every freaking year. It was like amazing, I thought. But
Mm-hmm.
one funny story, we were all on our way to Hatteras. I think it was in 1982. It's after the 74 U.S. Championships. It was 1982. We're all going up there, East Coast Surfing Championships. And yes, he had that little dog named Blackie. So we're in South Carolina getting gas at a gas station. It's like 1 in the morning. Nothing but black people everywhere. And what does Yancey do? He's going, "Here, Blackie, here, boy." And I looked at him and I went, "Yancey, shh, shh." And he was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
oh, yeah." Well, I thought we were
Oh
going to get
God.
lynched, you know? It was kind of funny now that I look back at it, but at the time I thought, yeah, we're going to die. Yancey was like kind of aloof like that, you know? It was funny when we were surfing Pickens Point, hundreds of surfers in the water, and Yancey would drop in on a wave. That little black dog would stand up on his hind legs. He could pick Yancey out of the pack, and he'd walk
Mm-hmm.
down the beach to the end of the point and then
Yeah.
walk back up with him. It was crazy. Yeah, it was a crazy little dog.
Oh wow. So you went to school in Pensacola, and what did things look like after that? What were you going to school for?
I was taking a lot of photography classes and art classes. I got married, moved to Hawaii. You know, I was
Mm-hmm.
airbrushing in Fort Walton Beach for years there,
Mm-hmm.
for a few years. I moved to Oahu, and every other weekend I would take the ferry over to Maui to Lahaina there and airbrush down there. I do a little surfing when I was there because I was only there for like, you know, just for the weekends at this guy's shop. I had an apartment on the 12th floor of this apartment building in Makiki, which is right next to Diamond Head. Yeah, I had a blast.
And what was that like? I was chatting with Gaynor a couple days ago, and he was talking about his first trip to Hawaii, and there had just been I don't know, what was it called? The Australian takeover or something, where the Australians were like showing up in force and then got beat up. And he was talking about like,
Oh, yeah, we were all there at the same time. You know, Tom Hudson and I think Gaynor was there and some other people from Pensacola.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, the Aussies, I remember the Pipeline Pro, the Hui was there, and they were like picking on this guy because Larry Bertleman would have been in the finals if this Australian guy hadn't have beat him out points wise.
mm-hmm,
And they're over
yep,
there they're picking on him and calling him names and like
mm-hmm.
punching at him and stuff, trying to get him to leave the beach so Bertleman could have his spot.
Oh my
Um,
God. Okay.
who was that guy? Wasn't Ian Cairns, but he was there. Randy Rarick came over and told the Hui, hey, knock this shit off, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Peter Townsend is who it was.
Yeah, so what was that like? So I feel like Hawaii has this, at least currently has this reputation of being this incredibly beautiful place, that was kind of hoodwinked into becoming a territory and then a state. And there's this kind of maybe resentment against colonialism. Is that how you would
Yeah.
describe that back
All
then?
all the locals, man. I was airbrushing in these shops, and these guys would beat your ass. I mean, they weren't afraid to just punch you out in the water, punch you out on the beach. It was very local, territorial. But when I'd come to the beach, I'd be sitting there talking to Ben Ipa,
Mm-hmm.
and the locals would see me talking to him, and him giving me waves and stuff. So they're like, all you got to do is like show some respect. If you don't show them respect, they will beat you down.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that basically you were able to, one, show respect, and two, you were clearly rubbing elbows with the right people.
Yeah. It's not a lot of times what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah. Yeah. If someone sees Ben Ipa give a wave to you, you're probably doing okay.
Yeah. Well, I used to surf Ala Moana every single morning before I went to work. I worked at the International Marketplace there. I'd get there, I don't know, 7:30. And, that was in town there. I would surf till about the latest 9:30. But 9 o'clock, 9:30, all these little Japanese rich kids, their parents had paid for them to go to school over there on Oahu. Mm-hmm. Hell, they weren't in school. They were out there surfing, but they'd come out by the dozens every morning about 9 o'clock, 9:30. Mm-hmm. And they'd catch you all. They're all out there, I'm not today. Talking to each other, yelling at you, But then I'd just leave and go to work because that's when I was leaving anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you say at this point you were married or not quite yet?
Yeah, I was married when I was in Hawaii.
Okay. And so you convinced your bride to come to Hawaii?
Yeah.
Was that a hard convincing, or were they all in?
Well, who doesn't want to go to Hawaii?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would take a lot of convincing, even if I didn't surf. Okay, so how did that unfold? So you made it, you came back to the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, well, my grandmother passed away when I was over there, so I came back, and then I went back to Hawaii. I wanted to go all through Indo surfing, so my wife flew home, and I continued on the journey, which was awesome.
And you guys are still married, so she must be an amazing person that gives you some freedom to, explore your passions and.
Oh, hell no! I've been married 3 times.
Okay.
They can only take so much of that,
Okay, yeah. Give me more tips.
They can only take so much of this surfing crap,
Uh-huh.
3rd time's the charm. I don't know. I've been married to this one for like 27 years. So
okay, that's a good run. I've been married once for 6 years. So
yeah,
I hear you.
It's brutal. My dad told me, he said, you both got to get 50-50 every 30 days. If you don't, it's not going to work. And he said some days it might be 60-40, 70-30, but by the end of those 30 days, if it's not 50-50, yeah, it's not going to work too well. And he said, watch out. The women always try to do more than us. He was right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And what do you mean they try to do more? Like they try to do more of their 50%.
Well,
and then
they do a lot of the housework. They do a lot of the grocery shopping. Women do a lot. And you can't take any of it for granted.
Yeah, you have to do your part. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard on us men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you wised up, and now you know the drill, and it's worked.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think too. Yeah, we don't get a lot of relationship training as kids.
No, it's like live and learn.
Yeah, and whatever probably dysfunctional relationship your parents had is your model. Yeah. What was your parents' relationship like? Was it pretty harmonious?
Well, they were both from farm families. They were married 55 years.
They shared a lot of the same values and.
Yeah, they didn't smoke or drink. My dad would have a
Hmm.
few beers now and then, but other
Hmm.
than that, yeah, they got along pretty good.
All right, so you're going through Indo, and where does that take you?
It's only been 50, 60 years ago.
Hmm.
Come on.
Yeah.
I went to Australia, and from Australia, I went over to New Zealand
Hmm.
and surfed Raglan. I went to this other Borneo, went to Borneo and surfed a little bit. Wasn't a whole lot there. So then from Borneo, we flew to Bali. In Bali, we met all these people, all these Aussie guys were in Bali,
Yeah.
and a lot of Hawaiians, and they were talking about this little island off Sumatra. Actually, Ricky Rasmussen had a place there in Java that we
Hmm.
stayed. It's like a bamboo tree house. Big Siberian tigers like rolling around in the jungle at night. So
Hmm.
we heard one night. Man, it was terrifying. It was like,
I
whoa!
bet.
That little island they call Nias?
Hmm.
Actually, they call it Nias so nobody could find it. It's actually Siam. And
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, that was one of the absolute best waves of the entire trip. Yeah, this is before cell phones and all that. I got somewhere and called, and my dad had gotten really ill, so then I flew home.
Hmm.
And my wife was going, "Where are you? What are you doing?" I said, "I'm surfing."
I can't call. I'm on a remote island surrounded by tigers.
Yeah, well, it's true.
So a lot of people I know, they started surfing. They're surfing now. You have quite a more of a progression.
If you look at what a real waterman is,
Hmm.
I mean, it's more than being a surfer.
Right.
I
Hmm.
mean, look at Laird Hamilton, kind of revolutionized the foiling thing, and he's done it all. And I always kind of looked up to those guys that were trying this and trying that and doing this and doing that, anything in the water. Because
Hmm.
if you're from the Gulf Coast, there's a lot more wind than there are good waves.
Yep.
And if you're kiteboarding, guess what? Or wing foiling, any of this other stuff, you're going to catch a
Yeah.
lot more waves and have a lot more water time than if you're surfing.
Right. Yep.
Because you can take a
Yeah.
2 foot choppy blown out wave and have a blast on it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see the foilers on some crumbly crap and be like, wow, you can just keep having fun.
The foil thing is where it's at. We're all riding these foil drives now. E-foil,
Yeah. My
got like
buddy just
a
got one.
huge battery on the bottom. Yeah, it's about
Hmm.
6 grand for the
Yeah.
foil drive. Now, if you buy the lift one, it's like $15,000.
Hmm. Yeah. The cost of entry is a little
Hey, if
prohibitive.
you're gonna play, you gotta pay.
Yeah.
But I've been airbrushing since I was like 13 years old. My theory is reverse retirement.
Yep.
Make enough money to pay all your bills and get by and save a little bit, but travel a lot. Then when I get old and stuff, then maybe I'll be a door greeter at Walmart. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. You're gonna enjoy your youth.
I'm still doing that. I'm still in reverse retirement here.
Well, if you're 72, is that what you said, and still doing it, then you're doing okay.
Yeah, I haven't done bad. I enjoy everything I do, man. I was out there this morning, 7:30 in the water.
Yeah, I have a friend who I used to surf with, and he got into kite surfing, and
Yeah.
I don't know if he's ever got on a surfboard again.
Well, the kite surfing is really an addictive sport. It can be as dangerous as you make it, though. I mean, a lot of people used to get hurt really bad, but that's just because they're doing crazy, crazy shit.
Yeah, man, I see them just get the amount of air that they get and think I would just like to do that at least once.
I was one of the first ones down here to do that. I was the first to get on a foil board down here. So just because you're first doesn't mean you're the best at it.
How do you view yourself inside of that community? Is that like a community that you foster, or you're more individualistic?
The surfing thing is kind of like a tribe, It's like
Mm-hmm.
super
Yeah.
localism, usually at all the spots. If you get out there and you rip, then the surfers are going to show you some respect, as long as you don't hog it up and yell at people and cut them off.
Mm-hmm.
The kite surfing thing is really laid back. So is the windsurfing part of it. I don't windsurf at all anymore. Now it's all like this morning I was on the kite. Everybody helps each other out, and it's kind of like, it's not so territorial. Like you can go kite anywhere, and if there's other kiters, most of the time they're going to be super nice and helpful to you. Because, a lot of times you need somebody to launch and land your kite, unless you can do it by yourself, which I can. It's a lot more accepting than the surf crowd.
My buddy who just got into the e-foil, it's like, you probably know exactly what this is. You can move it up and down on the mast, depending on, I guess.
That's the one I've got, the foil drive.
He was explaining that the culture around foiling right now is a lot more accessible, a lot less localist or whatever, and that's a beautiful thing. I feel like our surf community's relatively welcoming. I think most days if you paddle out and smile at someone, people will be happy to have you no matter what your ability level is, unless you're dropping in on people.
There's those people that like to snake you and cut you off and real serious about it. Then there's most everybody else out there just to have fun, so they don't have to have every wave and
yeah, exactly.
On and on.
Yeah.
I remember I went to Pensacola to a contest one time, and I was the first one to put a strap on a surfboard, so you could do those flying whirly birds and stuff. Wow. And Yancey always said, yeah, Rush was the first one with a strap on his board. I was like, I didn't think it was any big deal, but he made it sound like it was like rocket science or something. Like,
that's great.
Well, the windsurfers have straps on there. It just made sense to me to stick one on the front of the board,
Yeah, you're ready to innovate. We are basically about what we need time-wise. I try to shoot for around 30 minutes. Is there any question that I haven't asked you or story that might be fun?
Gosh, I've got so many stories, I mean, I used to go to Sebastian Inlet before it was a state park. I knew a lot of people in Cocoa Beach, famous guys. A lot of people don't know it, but, Gary Proper, he lived there. He invented the Ninja Turtle thing. He was an artist, A lot of people didn't know that. He died of cancer not too long ago.
And he was a surfer?
Gary Proper. Him and Mike Tabling were great friends. And Tabling passed away, too, of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred Grosskreutz and Davo, there are a lot of guys down there in the surfboard industry that, they're around acetone a lot. Seems like they all had liver cancer, liver failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because your liver has to detoxify that when it gets in your bloodstream. And I think that's what went wrong with them.
Especially poly is pretty bad, right? The epoxy resins seem to be less toxic. There are some really old shapers out there.
Heck yeah.
Who are still crushing it.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of these boards are all CNC now. They'll get a master shaper to shape a plug, and then they throw it in the CNC. They'll scan it and have the file for it, and they'll pump out a bunch of them. And even the lamination stuff come a long ways. They got all these new techniques, and stuff. And a lot of these boards are made in Thailand over there. The Cobra Surfboard Factory in Pattaya, they make thousands of boards, paddle boards, surfboards, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and did you tell me you shaped too?
Yeah, I shaped a lot of boards. I probably shaped, 60, 70 boards. Mm-hmm. And then I'd laminate and put the boxes in and laminate. I had the first 3-fin surfboard ever, I think.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, it was really crazy. I put 3 boxes in there, but the stupid thing I did, I put the center box up an inch in front of the 2 boxes on either rail.
Okay.
And my thought was, well, I could use it as a single fin or as a twin fin. I didn't think anything about using it as a tri-fin. And then, like 2 or 3 years later, the tri-fins came out. I was like, man.
Yeah.
I was so close.
Yeah, that's hilarious. As you start to get older, do you see this hobby that you're engaged in, this community that you're associated with, do you start to see it differently, or does it feel the same as it did?
Well, it's interesting. It draws in a lot of people. If you were a surfer, old school surfer, that was like the coolest, And then when I got into the windsurfing thing, all kinds of odd people were jumping into that sport, and the kite surfing as well. There's a lot more diversity in where these people that are getting into these sports are actually coming from.
Okay.
It's not as homey or whatever it used to be, you know.
Yeah. There's
But
more diversity in the population, is what you're telling me.
yeah, it's gotten so diversified, and I mean, I guess that's great because it expands these sports, you know.
Hmm.
You know, one thing I've seen through this whole thing, there used to be the brick and mortar shops,
Yeah.
surfboards, windsurfing, kiteboarding, and then as soon as these places got to be online, where you could go online
Yeah.
and buy a surfboard or buy a windsurfing board or a kiteboard or kites, all these little brick and mortar shops had to close up because these people were selling tons of stuff
Hmm.
to thousands of people instead of just enough stuff to locals,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. They had
And
economies of
everybody wants
scale.
price. Everybody wants the best price.
Hmm. Yeah.
So the more you buy, you know, the less you could sell it for, and
Hmm.
then you could do volume sales.
Right.
But now there's no instructors because there's no shops.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you see these sports grow and then they shrink because when there's nobody, you know, teaching windsurfing or kiteboarding or foiling, wing foiling, you got to travel now to go take a lesson.
Yeah. Hmm.
And it it'll grow and get huge and it goes online, then it shrinks
Yeah.
in the next 5 or 6 years because now there's no instructors.
Hmm.
You know, that's one thing I've seen that's like kind of crazy. It's like a up and down yo-yo type thing.
Hmm.
And you know, the windsurfing thing, people still do it,
Yeah.
but not as much as they used to. And then the kiteboarding thing, people still kiteboard, but now it's all about the foil.
Right.
You know, the
Yeah.
wing foil, the e-foil. You know, the e-foil thing, you can take a crappy wave and have a blast on it. And there's no paddling with that either. You know, you're just going out, you got a little remote in your hand, you know.
Hmm.
The cool thing about the foil drive is you can put that motor like 15 centimeters off the bottom of your board.
Yeah.
And then when you catch a wave, it actually lifts up. You don't have to have the power on anymore. Now you're riding just on the foil. So it's
Yeah.
like a self tow-in type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
And so
that.
now the motor's up out of the water. There's no drag on it. Now you're just riding on the foil.
Yeah.
I mean, there are two guys out there today. I let this one guy, this good friend of mine who does my website stuff, I let him use my foil drive today, and he did really good on it.
That's cool. Yeah. My understanding is there's quite a learning curve, especially on the regular foils.
I remember when I started trying the kite foil from just twin tip kiteboard,
Hmm.
totally different ball game. Totally different. You got to have your weight forward. You know, you're not turning on the rail. You know, it's a whole different thing. But once you figure the foil out, it's super quiet. It's super fast.
Hmm.
There's no drag, and it's completely silent. And you know, you're not going over chop.
Yeah.
I am patient. I trust in the process of love. It is deeper than the mind can know. I open my heart to that glow. When I
Hey, aloha, everybody. I hope everybody gets to ride as long as I have.